Hi guys, Rui here with part 5 Tude for Blender Box Cutter Mastery. In this last part I'm gonna talk about stuff that I haven't mentioned before, some functions that are new, some that are old, some stuff that it's rarely mentioned in any other videos or could be easily missed or misunderstood. So let's start with the cube and perform a simple cut. Now you can see that my cutter is being added to cutter's collection. And if I go to edit mode, the cutter hasn't been applied and it's here in a modifier stack. You can also check it if you're using hard ops by pressing Ctrl tilde. We have the same modifier in here. Let's go back and let's say that we want to work in destructive mode. So by default, you can see here we're working in non-destructive mode, but you can flip it anytime to destructive. And if you want to perform a cut that you want to be applied immediately, and you don't want to have any cutters to show in here, every single cut you perform is going to be applied to the mesh without leaving any trace. Another thing that you can turn on and off is this small function in here, which will actually display or not display the cut being performed. So if I turn it on, you can see I can visualize how deep the cut goes. I don't really know why would you want to turn it off, but if you don't want to see it for some reason, maybe it's blocking the view or you got some other stuff in the way, I don't know, you can always switch it off if you don't want to see that. Then again, if you are cutting a cube and you are working in non-destructive mode and you have a lot of cuts, let's say, really a lot of them, let's just keep cutting this cube and perform a series of cuts in here, right? And let's say that you are happy with all of them and you want to apply them. So going through all these cuts here and applying them manually would be a chore. So all you need to do is just press this button here, which will apply all the Boolean modifiers. Now the same option can be executed in hard ops. All you need to do is go to operations and click on smart apply, which will apply all modifiers except for bevels and weighted normals. So let's say I had a bevel going on in here, right? Oh, we got some shading issues in here, so let's fix it. Just shifting this boolean really quickly. There you go. And maybe let's shift this one as well. This one is causing the it's a little bit too close to the edge of the cube. Let's apply weighted modifier by using hard ops. So you can see I have bevel going on and weighted normals. So now if I'm gonna go to smart apply in here, you can see that bevel and weighted normals were not applied, and the only thing that was applied were the booleans. And smart apply in hard ops works exactly in the same way, although it has more options, but that's a subject for a different video. Now let's talk about the new functions of BOXCUTTER that were introduced about a month ago or so. It's called release lock, and there's one more here called laser cut lock. So let's switch the laser cut lock for a moment and let's talk about this function, release lock. So what does it do? If you perform a cut, so I'm going to draw a shape and release my mouse, you see it works as if I pressed tab immediately after drawing the shape. So now I can rotate it, I can move it, I can do all kinds of stuff with it. So if I draw it and release my mouse, I can actually design my cut very carefully if I wanted to do so. Another thing that you can do with this release lock is that let's say you draw a shape on a surface but you wanted to move it a bit to a side. Now instead of going to G and then moving it on respective axis, you can simply draw a shape, hold shift and grab this dot in the middle, and if you move it, you will move it on the surface of the plane that you draw it on, and then you can keep designing your shape. Now if you click, you're gonna apply the shape. However, if you hold shift and click, you will perform a laser cut. Now the laser cut lock is actually quite cool. Now laser cut lock is the exact opposite. So instead of freezing the shape at the start, it freezes it at the end. So you draw a shape, click once to perform a laser cut, and now the laser cut is being locked. And again, you can do the same thing. So by holding shift, you can move this whole shape along the plane. So without the shape going outside those two planes, if that makes any sense. And then you apply the shape. However, if you have two functions turned on at the same time, so release lock and laser cut, you can do cool stuff like this. You can design a shape, right? You can bevel it, let's say, okay? And then if you press the laser lock, will lock the shape at the end of the cut. So one more time, you draw a shape. Let's say you create a bevel, you resize it on y-axis, and then perform a cut, and the cut's gonna be frozen. And then you can keep editing your shape, right? So these functions can work together in tandem. Another cool function of BOXCUTTER is recut. And recut can be enabled here. So let's say I'm gonna cut this geometry here. Well, that's maybe too deep. Let's do something like this. And perform another cut, which is a laser cut, right? Then I'm gonna perform a cut from the side and press X to switch to slice, and Alt X to go into recut mode. Now you can see what happens. That slice has recovered the data that was cut out by the other two cutters. Now the cool thing about it is that I can recall that modifier by using hard ops, or just simply pressing Alt H, or recalling cutters from this collection. And I can actually keep editing that part individually, right? So I could create something like this. And you could create some really interesting shapes with by using that kind of technique. The only problem with the recut is that once you perform the recut function, the recut turns itself off after one operation, which I think it's a bug. So Jerry, if you're watching this, someone might want to look into that. Another very useful function of BOXCUTTER, which is again combined with hard ops, is material cut. So let me show you what I mean. Let's create two boxes. Go to dev mode really quickly. I'm gonna use Alt M material system in hard ops to quickly add materials. Maybe this one, add something darker. Let's switch the material to something darker here. There we go, so you can see the difference. All right, now this one, actually, let's make it brighter. There we go. So if I go to hard ops, to BOXCUTTER options, and go to hard ops, I can select a cutting material from the list. So now you can see I have two materials, materials 1 and 2. So the 001 is darker, and the material without any digits is this one on the left side. So if I'm going to set this material here as 001, if I'm gonna perform a cut now in this geometry, I'm gonna perform a cut that will inherit this material, which is really extremely useful. This material function has another option, and it's quite interesting actually. So let's say we're gonna create a cube, and the cube doesn't have any material. So remember, we have this material assigned here as material 1. Now if I have no cuts on the mesh, and I'm gonna perform a cut on the mesh, the whole mesh is gonna be colored with that material. Another thing that you can turn on is that if you don't like this the cutters being displayed as kind of like a transparent objects, you can shift here to wires only, and now the cutter will be displayed as wire. So even if you switch to let's say inset, that usually is, has a blue walls, blue faces, you will not be able to see it. You still can see the color of the cutter, which actually helps. So you got, you know, red for slice, and then you got blue for this. So, you know, it's easy to recognize which cutter you're using, but you will not be able to see that, see the geometry itself, the sort of semi-transparent geometry. So it could be useful in certain situations which you have a very busy scene, or you're performing an extremely small cuts and you need to see what's inside, or maybe some narrow cuts like this and just the colors in a way. This could be quite useful. There are many other functions that are quite self-explanatory that, you know, if you open the menu, you can easily understand what they do. For instance, parent shape. Well, if you don't want the cutters to be parented to the target, you simply switch it off, right? Auto smooth. I don't know why would anyone want to turn it off, but basically that turns off auto smooth upon cut, which means the mesh will not be smoothed out, right? Apply scale, for instance, which is also by default turned on. Well, if the mesh is being resized, right, in object mode, if that function, if that option is on, it means the cutters will, the box cutter will understand that the object was resized, and it will simply act accordingly. If you switch this off, you might actually get some odd behavior. Then you have stuff like, for example, enable top bar, which is, where is it? Here, enable top bar. So if this bar is missing, you can always switch it back on. But again, it's on by default, so it should always be there. Another thing that's turned on by default is to show the dots. So the dots are basically the dots that are being displayed when you go to tab mode, or when you perform this release log function, or you know, and you go to the pause mode. So if you go to the options here, you can see display dots. You can simply switch them off. But again, I don't know why would you want to do that. So if you see anything turned on by default, it usually there is a reason for it. And I would just leave it as is, unless you really need to change something for your to personalize your experience. But these options are turned on for a reason. There's another thing that I want to show you about drawing the shape. So let's say that you want to draw a shape, but not from the corner, so not from where the mouse is touching the object for the first time, but from the middle. You can go to D options, D menu, and switch this this option here to center. And now if I draw, I'm going to be drawing from the center. This could be quite useful when you, for example, draw a shape using the grid. So I'm in the middle of the box, and then instead of, you know, drawing this way, or maybe drawing from here, I can switch this to drawing from the center, and then I can really, you know, get a very precise cut if I wanted to. The problem with this is that this option will switch off after the first draw. So to go around it is, if you don't have this enabled, simply enable Alt Center. Now if I hold Alt and draw, I can do it every time I want, and by default I'm gonna have a draw from the cursor. If you wanted to use this function with grid, what you need to do is press Ctrl and start drawing, then click on Alt, and then you can keep drawing, and release Ctrl if you don't need the grid, or bring Ctrl back if you need snapping. So again, press Ctrl, start drawing, click on Alt and hold it. I'm holding Ctrl and Alt at the same time. Release Ctrl if you don't need the grid, press back Ctrl if you still need snapping. And you can really draw very, very precise shapes from the center of geometry. Okay guys, that's all from me. Thanks for watching, and if you ever need some help with hard ops or box cutter, you can go to Master Xeon 1001 website, YouTube channel. There is a BOXCUTTER playlist. You can watch it. There's always new updates popping up there for box cutter and for hard ops. Also, there is a documentation on Gumroad or Blender Market. And if you're using hard ops, you can always go to settings, hard ops learning, and you have a whole menu with Discord channel, Facebook group, etc. There's a lot of helpful people, and you can always ask questions, report bugs, or even submit your own wishes, maybe also ideas for new tools for BOXCUTTER and hard ops. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye bye.